All right. Well, I think we're ready to move on. So next we have up the CCEJ, California Conference for Equality and Justice.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, board members, and Superintendent Steinhauser, and all the leadership and staff of Long Beach Unified. Thank you for making the time for us to be here today. I'm Kimi Manikis. I'm the Executive Director of CCEJ, the California Conference for Equality and Justice. And with me is our leadership team, Associate Executive Director Daniel Solis, and Program Directors Vanessa Michelle Petty, Katlea Pagdilao, and Belia Saavedra, who are here also to answer any questions that might come up about some of our programs. So many of you are familiar with CCEJ, know very intimately what our work is, but it's been a while since we've been able to formally be here and talk about what the work is that we're currently doing across Southern California, but then also specifically with Long Beach Unified. So thank you again for making the time for us to be here. So just to give some background on who CCEJ is, many of you know that we have about a 55-year history here in Long Beach. We're part of a national organization called the National Conference for Christians and Jews, or NCCJ, here since 1963. And the way that we talk about our work is in these kind of three thematic areas. One is building real unity. By embracing differences and striving for understanding, CCEJ is building a more unified and safer Southern California. Transforming individuals and communities. We educate and empower diverse communities to work for inclusion, justice, and equity. And overcoming conflict. We restore relationships and help families, schools, and communities heal their divisions through dialogue. Here's a little bit again about our history. And I think I would say that maybe the last time we presented to the board was maybe around 10 years ago, and ever since then, the work has really grown and evolved. And I'll go over a little bit about how that's what that looks like in our communities, and specifically in Long Beach right now. So over the past 5 years, we've worked to really hone in on our mission work, but then also expand the work, especially around the area of restorative justice, and to create these 3 departmental programs that house the programs that we currently are providing to Long Beach Unified. So Building Bridges for Youth educates and trains young people and adult allies to examine their stereotypes and biases, and to make their schools, workplaces, and communities more accepting and inclusive. Restorative Justice in Schools builds respectful and safer schools where students and teachers value and trust each other. Students and teachers are trained in circle dialogue and other restorative practices to decrease suspensions and expulsions. And Restorative Practices in Communities offers an alternative approach to conflict resolution by helping to restore relationships and heal harms. CCEJ uses restorative practices to divert youth from the juvenile justice system and address organizational conflicts as well. So here's kind of an overview of the various programs that we're partnering with you all around. So we've got Building Bridges Camp, which has been around since the 80s, and I think has been served as the flagship program of CCEJ. We have our in-campus program, Conscious Classrooms, as well as our Building Bridges clubs that aims to sustain the efforts that are established from camps, and then also Conscious Classrooms to continue the efforts. And then we have Youth Restorative Diversion, all of which I'll go over. Restorative Justice Training for Educators, and then our 2 newest programs, Real Resiliency and Raising Futures, as well as other programs that folks in Long Beach Unified have been involved in, including our Racial Equity and Healing Justice program, and our recent ableism training that we've done as well. So for Building Bridges Camp, this is our 3-day residential leadership program for high school students. It's focused on understanding divisions in the US and how to challenge those divisions through experiential activities and dialogue. We've done, historically, the camp has focused on racial identity and on a racial justice lens. And last year we introduced a new gender justice camp, excuse me, which serves the same purpose of understanding some of the fundamental concepts connected to social justice, but using the systems of sexism, heterosexism, and cisgenderism to, and then their own personal experiences to understand how the patriarchy and other systems of oppression impact their experiences. And so since 2016, these are listed here are the schools that we've partnered with around Building Bridges Camp. And you know, we've learned that our model does, I think it's best work when we are incorporating students of all diverse representations and identities. So we include students of color, white students, students of all genders, including cisgender men and women, transgender students, gender nonconforming and non-binary students, and then students of all different sexual orientations. And the idea is that the more diverse of a group that we have, the more opportunity there is for young people to share their experiences about how they've been impacted by these systems, and have an opportunity to learn and challenge one another to grow. As I mentioned, the Building Bridges Clubs Alliance is a leadership development and networking opportunity for students on campus. Our young people and the adult allies on campus are given the opportunity to, I think, maximize the excitement and the growth that comes out of Building Bridges Camp to sustain the efforts and build a more inclusive community on their school campus. And so we have clubs at Jordan, McBride, Milliken, and Wilson. Conscious Classrooms is our in-school leadership program. We used to have a program called Talking in Class, which was an immersive 3-day program. And we wanted to be responsive to the requests of schools to really preserve some of the instruction time. It was a lot of instruction time that was lost. So we developed Conscious Classrooms, which actually is a standards-aligned program that is thematically based. We are able to step into a classroom with a teacher for 2 weeks and take over instruction with an immersive thematic unit and then also a week of action. So the units that we have right now are on immigration, gender norms, LGBTQIA history, gang violence, racial identity, and interfaith dialogue. We also are in the process of developing an environmental justice unit and also an elementary school program, because currently Conscious Classrooms is for middle and high school. And these are the schools that we currently have partnerships with around Conscious Classrooms. This also, fortunately, is sustained by foundation funding as well. So we do offer every once in a while, we have the opportunity to offer free programming to middle schools, specifically for Long Beach. Our restorative justice training is kind of the arm around adult work. So we've been, as you know, restorative justice has seen an emergence because of the need to identify trauma-informed approaches toward interrupting the school-to-prison pipeline, to keep students in school, and to also improve school climate. So with the increased attention to social-emotional learning and building strong relationships between all people on campus, especially between students and adults, CCEJ has taken on the work of restorative justice because it so nicely falls in line with the historic work that we've already been doing with schools. So these are the schools that either at one point have had a coordinator for restorative justice or where we provided training and technical assistance. We were offering a coordinator model, so if you might remember a few years back, we would have dedicated coordinators to specific schools, which had its benefits, but also for us, in a business model perspective, it wasn't always, it's difficult to sustain that. And also, the restorative justice efforts on a school campus, we also found it was difficult to sustain them if it was just housed with one person. So the move away from a coordinator model more toward a technical assistance and training model is something that we're implementing across all our school partners throughout the county, actually. And also, the work that we've picked up around restorative justice is connected to juvenile diversion work. The landscape around juvenile justice, we're seeing a lot of shifts around the ways that people are responding to young people, the desire to move away from the criminalization of regular adolescent behavior, and the desire to really respond with some developmentally appropriate and trauma-informed ways. And so we found that with the restorative justice model that we're implementing throughout our programs, that it is also effective in the juvenile justice realm as well. And so we've borrowed from models throughout the world and then also throughout the country to develop a juvenile diversion program that is growing and also shifting, and I'll talk a little bit about how that looks. So the model that we have right now is that we work with law enforcement, district attorneys, and schools, and then also community-based referrals to take cases that would normally be filed on. So if a young person commits a crime, either the law enforcement agency or the district attorney we'll see the case, might see that it's appropriate to be diverted, and then we'll divert it to us to handle. And depending on the severity of the case, if it's appropriate for restorative justice, let's say it's a felony or a really serious misdemeanor, or if there is a person harmed or a victim that's been involved, that we're able to take it and do a restorative justice circle as a way of keeping it out of the system. And we found that that's really impactful also, both for the victim, but also for the young person who committed the harm and for their families as well. For the more low-level citations and for the things that might not need such an intensive intervention, we have developed what's called a Real Resiliency program. And that program is a education-based program similar to, aligned with the education programs that we would provide through Building Bridges for Youth. And it develops the skills and knowledge for young people who might be struggling with particular issues in their life and that might have contributed to why they committed that crime. So we've received referrals from, I would say, law enforcement and district attorneys from throughout the county, but we have also received referrals from Long Beach Unified School Safety and expect to increase our involvement in receiving referrals from Long Beach PD. So we've received funding from the Board of State and Community Corrections as well as through the County of LA under the Office of Diversion and Reentry for their new Youth Development and Diversion program. And so they're trying to pilot and create a 5-year plan to spread juvenile diversion across the entire county. And they're starting with the jurisdictions that they feel are the most impacted. So Long Beach has been identified as one of those jurisdictions, and we've been identified as a community-based organization to work with Long Beach PD to take those cases. So we're gonna see within this year, I think, an increase in that realm, in that area of work, and that will also likely impact, of course, schools and the relationships that we have with schools as well. So these are just the types of cases that we have been accepting. And like I said, we do accept some of the lower level offenses, but then also we have the ability to accept really serious crimes and harms as well. Okay, so just a little bit about Real Resiliency. The ways that we are structuring it, so with Long Beach Unified, we have just, or we're about to enter into an agreement to accept 50 cases that are related to either some type of violation, possible expulsion, some things that the program might be able to address. And so the program, how it's structured is that we have the young person go through 3 foundational units and then 1 individualized unit that is maybe specific to the issues that they're facing. So the foundational ones are just some education on the school to prison pipeline, emotional literacy, Thrive Not Survive, which are conflict resolution and mediation skills. And then the individualized ones are around gender identity, navigating systems, including the school system and also the juvenile justice system, healthy relationships, community violence, substance abuse, and social media. Okay, and there's just a little bit more information. So it sounds like the cases that we're going to be working with are around conflict violation and then the recommendations for expulsion, and then other things that might come across as being appropriate for being sent to us for real resiliency. The other thing that we found when we were working with families around the juvenile justice work was that parents and caregivers also needed a level of support in order to be able to support their young person through tough times. And so we've just launched what's called Raising Futures, which is a parent and caregiver program, similarly structured to Real Resiliency in that it's educational models and skills-based, to really offer caregivers and parents the support that they need to adopt some skills like restorative parenting, understanding maybe what are some of the challenges that their young person is going through, and support them through that. So we just launched this. So it's something that we're learning, but we also have been in conversation with Dr. Simon about how this could potentially support some of the work that the family resource centers might be looking to do, or any area where you need parent support. Just know that this is also available as an option. So unlike Real Resiliency, there isn't individualized units, but there are foundational units, including these ones: restorative practices in the home, supporting youth's healthy coping mechanisms, understanding and navigating school systems and legal systems, and raising sexually healthy youth. Okay. And like I said, other involvement that we've had, we recently just completed our racial equity and healing justice work. And this has been a partnership with Southern California grant makers to train adults in facilitation skills so that they can hold dialogue on racial healing in their communities. So we were able to, we graduated about 40 facilitators throughout Southern California, and it started during the National Day of Racial Healing in January. And there have been dialogues that have happened all the way south to San Diego, here in Long Beach, in churches and in homes and in community-based organizations, and then also in LA. And several Long Beach Unified staff have gone through the training as well. So we're appreciative of that partnership. We're looking to do a second cohort of this, and so I'll just keep you all informed about when that happens. And then also most recently, we presented to the Special Education Community Advisory Committee on bullying and prevention strategies around ableism. So we're looking forward to still just being a resource to you all in that way, but then also just being a resource whenever, as we have in previous years, whenever something happens, either in schools or internally with staff. Know that we have volunteers excuse me, that can respond. We have very qualified and talented staff who are able to customize trainings or responses for you all as those things come up. And the chart that you have is just an overview of the schools and which programs and services that are currently in those schools. So that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, my information's here, but I also want to leave some time, if you have time, I'm not sure, to ask some questions, and hopefully my staff and I can answer.
Okay, do we have any questions?
I got questions, Madam Chair.
Well, that's kind of why I looked at
But
you.
I don't want to hog up the.
I'll start then. Kimmy, do you have a checklist though of the programs? Because you guys are great partners, and we, schools all the time with their parent involvement money. So, for example, do you have a checklist of like the program topic and then how much it costs? And because some of them are free and others are not.
Yes.
So do you have that? You could send it to us so that we can put that in
Definitely.
our parent university
Yes.
file, so
Great.
that folks can get that, because that would be really helpful. Because you have
Yes.
new programs too that you've added.
We do,
Yeah,
yes.
so
And depending year to year, like you're saying, the fee changes depending on grant funding,
And
right?
if you could include, just like you did here, the hours, like sometimes, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it's over, you know, a period of time, it might be a one-time or a four-time, whatever it happens to be.
Great.
So that would be really great. Excellent, thank you.
Definitely, yes.
So it's, thank you, as always, Kimmy, for the presentation. It's interesting because a couple months ago, I actually had asked Yumi, CCEJ came up in one of our business and finance committee meetings. I was like, so what are we doing with CCEJ? And then, you know, had a chance to meet with you all.
Yeah.
So a couple of things, Kimmy. One is, and you alluded to it, it's always appreciate CCEJ being there as a resource for when things happen. But I think just as important, it's key to build our district capacity, right, to prevent things or not allow for things to escalate.
Right.
Right, so whether that's through workshops, trainings, professional development, I think that's important. I'm wondering, what, if any, interaction and collaboration CCEJ has with, like some of the folks that presented here yesterday were Long Beach Forward. I know CFJ is also doing work with youth on restorative practices and restorative justice, because one of the some of the feedback and input that we've been getting from our LCAP forums is around sort of restorative practice work, restorative justice, not just within schools, but in community contexts, as well as building district capacity, right, to engage in a variety of issues. So I'm wondering what if any collaboration, interaction, and or communication you have with some of the groups that are participating in the LCAP.
Yes, we have very positive and open communication and relationships with those organizations. I think because we don't necessarily have a community organizing model, that the work just looks different. So we're able to lend our perspective as practitioners on the ground to help guide maybe some of the efforts to shift policies or practices. We were involved with the first LCAP hearing a little bit more intimately by presenting a workshop, and I think being able to talk about, excuse me, what the RJ model in schools looks like to parents and some of the people who participated was really important. And so we're open to having collaborative relationships that continue to support whatever work that you all want to continue with the LCAP. I know that there's been dedicated funds for restorative justice in the LCAP, and however we can help support either development around a plan around those funds or what a multi-year tiered rollout, looks like, we're here to support in that.
Yeah, which, thank you. So that leads me to my second question. So you mentioned that you're transitioning away from the RJ coordinator, school specific, and moving more to TA. So what does that look like from your perspective in terms of collaboration, partnership with our schools and or districts?
Maybe I can invite Belia to come up and talk about that. Belia is our director for restorative justice in schools and can help share a little bit more about that.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. So one of the biggest distinctions I think we would draw in between those two is that what we found sometimes with the coordinator model is that people look at it as though the coordinator is in charge of the restorative justice program. And one of the biggest kind of shifts that we're trying to make in the messaging around restorative justice is that it's not a program, it's actually like holistic, collective cultural practice that cannot live with one person. So besides the business concerns of trying to sustain a particular person's job, which is also very real, we're really looking at the way that TA and training, coaching, consulting type of stuff actually builds the capacity to keep it sustainable over time. One, so that we move away from this idea that the coordinator is the program person in charge of it. Like, if you want to be restorative, go to that room, rather than what we're really looking forward towards, which is we want to have people experience restorative practices, restorative dialogue, restorative interactions, no matter what room they go into, no matter who they're talking to, including training. We just did a training at Wilson with, I think, 9 of the campus safety folks, and they were really super into it. So really looking at like how we can build that sustainability over time by doing larger scales of trainings that are not just reliant on one person. I think one of the things that's so cool and also different about working inside of nonprofits is like that our goal is to put ourselves out of business one day because we've been so effective in building the capacity inside of the partners that we work with. So that's really what we're looking at, and the coordinator model, as great and helpful as it was, wasn't quite aligned with that vision.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I don't have any other questions.
Wonderful.
No.
Well,
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Wonderful
all. Thanks for
presentation.
the years of partnership.
And I would just like to echo, CCJ has always been there, both as a preventative, as well as an intervention, as well as a support. So, I mean, they literally will drop everything they're doing if there's a crisis in the community or in wherever it happens to be. So we can't thank you enough for doing that. So
Thank you.
so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. I think it's interesting today that we started our morning focusing on relationship-based learning, that type of thing, focusing on our kindness and humanity. We started that way this morning. We're ending on that subject, and that's a good place to focus. So thank you, everyone. But that concludes our workshop for today, and thank you for your presentations.
Thanks.